Hi, I'm Kristen Hodgden, an IVF mom, proud fertility advocate, and co-founder of Rescripted. Welcome to Dear Infertility, the first ever podcast that doubles as an advice column for fertility, infertility, and pregnancy loss. This season, we're going back to our roots, highlighting personal fertility stories from those who have been there through IVF, egg freezing, donor conception, surrogacy, and more. Now let's dive in and work towards ending the stigma around fertility, infertility, and pregnancy loss.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mackenzie Purdy, reproductive endocrinologist at Kindbody. Did you know that endometriosis affects about 10% of reproductive aged women? This condition may make it harder to become pregnant. Visit kindbody.com/rescripted to learn more.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Dear Infertility. I'm your host, Kristen, and I'm here with Chloe Melas. Hi, Chloe.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who don't know Chloe, she is an entertainment reporter for CNN, covering all things entertainment in Hollywood. Using her platform to share her own family's journey with IVF, Chloe's effort to raise awareness for other families on their own journeys have been covered by People Magazine, Extra, Yahoo, and more. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, what an intro.
Well, you've been such a shining light in this community, sharing your journey with infertility and IVF. And so really excited to dive in a little bit further with you today.
Me too. All right. Well, look, no topic is off limits. So hit me with whatever you got. So.
Perfect. That's what I love to hear. So before we dive into the nitty gritty, I was just wondering, can you give us a brief overview of sort of your path to parenthood in your own words?
How much time do you have?
Oh my God, that's always what I say too. You have a week?
Yeah. Well, look, I always wanted to have children. It was like getting married, finding a husband, having kids, whether girls, boys, how many, that really wasn't something that was ever kind of figured out. But I knew that mom was going to be somewhere in my bio of life. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in the South, and I would say that people generally have children rather young. I mean, we're seeing that trend change to skewing a bit older. Women were putting our careers first. We're kind of maybe getting married a little bit later in life. My grandma had kids at 19, and then she had 4 children. My mom was in her 30s when she had my brother and I, but never along the way did I ever hear the words IVF, never heard about a miscarriage. Never heard that it was hard to get pregnant or that it took a minute to try, ever. Yeah. So when my husband and I started trying, it was not working. And I knew almost immediately that something was off, something was wrong. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten pregnant when I was in college from a boyfriend that I was dating at the time. And I don't know if you'd call it a chemical pregnancy or whatnot, but it was positive on a pregnancy test. And then before you even knew it, I had a chemical pregnancy. Okay. And as crazy as that is to say, I mean, that's very personal. I've never, ever shared that before, but thank goodness that happened, because I was not ready to be a mom my freshman year of college. But my point in saying that is that I knew that on my end that I was able to get pregnant. Now, obviously there was a chemical pregnancy or something there, so something wasn't right. But in my heart of hearts, I knew that something was off. And then that's when this quest to parenthood for my husband and I took the next 2 years of our life and just swallowed us up. And it was a very dark time, but a beautiful ending to it all. But I also we are both aware that there is not a happy ending for everybody. So we're cognizant of that. But, we were really lucky that we did end up with 2 beautiful, healthy little boys in the end.
Oh. I love following you and seeing your beautiful family. But so when did you sort of decide to maybe take the next step into fertility treatments or getting initial testing done?
So, my husband and I, we were having unprotected sex pretty much from the moment that we met. I on birth control for a while because I had always really, really bad cramps and really heavy periods. I'm convinced I probably have endometriosis or something. But anyway, when my husband and I got married, we weren't practicing safe sex at all. And it wasn't because we were necessarily intentionally trying to start a family. I just think that we were just pretty carefree about the whole thing. But when we really did have a conversation shortly after we got married that we wanted to have children, that's when I started with my very type A personality, tracking my periods and getting the kits where you were seeing when you were ovulating. And I did not know until after I was married that there is a very short window of when you can get pregnant, because I thought that you could get pregnant all the time and whenever you had unprotected sex. So I never knew. I mean, I guess I missed that in biology class. I never registered. And I
don't think we're taught that. I mean, like sex ed at Rescripted, we always say sex ed is broken because like we're taught from a young age pregnancy prevention versus how human biology actually works. And so, I mean, I was 27, came off the pill, wasn't getting my period, and didn't even realize that if I wasn't getting my period, that meant I wasn't ovulating. And if I wasn't ovulating, that meant I couldn't get pregnant. Like college educated person, And so that has to be a common experience, I think, amongst women. And then bam, you get an infertility diagnosis and you're sort of blindsided even more than you would have been otherwise if you had known like the actual chances each month.
Exactly. I feel like I was at such a disservice because I lacked the information. And I don't really know what would have changed had I known more about my ovulation or more about my chances or the odds stacked against me due to my age or whatnot. I think that everything just happened the way that it was going to happen. And I don't really know, even with the information I have now, any choices that I would have made differently. Mm-hmm. But I immediately went to my OBGYN after my husband and I were having unprotected sex while I was tracking my ovulation for just a few months. And she ran a series of blood tests and told me that overall my blood work was normal. Mm-hmm. And that's when she suggested, I remember sitting in her office in Soho in Manhattan and her telling me that Brian, my husband, needed to go get his sperm tested, to which I thought, I mean, okay, he's never going to want to do that. And it's not going to be him. It's probably me. And this is going to be really awkward. So I asked Brian to go get his sperm tested and figured out. And would he find a urologist? Could he go look into that? And he did. But I remember it was not an easy conversation, but he knew that, we were trying and it wasn't happening and let's go see. So we were out to dinner just a few weeks later when we got a call from my doctor, my OBGYN, telling me that she had the results of Brian's semen analysis, which for some reason, maybe she sent him off to go get it tested, but she was the one telling us the results. Mm-hmm. And she was like, the numbers are not good. It's below average on, at the time, I didn't know what she was talking about, but sperm count, motility, morphology, all of these words, I had no idea what they meant, but that Brian was below average. And it was such a blow. We were so upset. I was so devastated. Brian was so devastated. And this was a watershed breaking point moment in our marriage and our lives because it was so unexpected. We never expected Brian to be the one that had an issue. I knew nothing about how to fix this. And I am such a fixer in my life. And there we were left with this terrible diagnosis, and no answers, nowhere to turn.
Did she give you any next steps at that point?
She told us that we needed to find a fertility specialist. And that's when I started Googling around and I found a fertility clinic that happened to be really close to my CNN offices at the time. We were at Columbus Circle and I found a fertility clinic really close by. And my husband and I, we met with this very well-known doctor. And I remember crying in his gorgeous floor-to-ceiling windowed office overlooking Central Park. And he's like, you're fine. Chloe, your numbers are fine and you're young. I was like almost 30 at the time. He's like, Brian, you're young and you're healthy. And my husband is a workout fanatic, super healthy guy. If you see him on Instagram, he has like 100 abs. He's always he doesn't drink alcohol, no drugs, nothing. He's just this perfect like specimen. And the doctor just said, you're going to be fine. And we really thought this is going to be okay. And we're still going to be able to get pregnant naturally or with a little bit of help. So the doctor just said, I'm going to monitor your ovulation. I want you to come in and I want you to get blood work here twice a month. And I will tell you when to go home and have sex. So we did that for a few months. It didn't work. Then he put me on estrogen and I think letrozole, but he put me on a couple of different medications to have both ovaries ovulating. Because again, I didn't know that one ovary ovulates, then the next ovary ovulates. So now I'm in like intense AP biology now, right? In the real world. Gosh. And he puts me on this medicine, which has my hormones very much on the brink and I'm already stressed out. And I'm still getting my blood work done. And this goes on for like 6 months about where I'm going in twice a month while on this medication, then having timed intercourse at home, which was so stressful, not romantic. And every month it's just like digging a deeper hole in our marriage, in our relationship. And I feel like we're getting further away from the goal of becoming parents.
Pausing just for a sec. I actually want to just say that this resonates with me so much. And I always say that IUIs and like timed intercourse cycles that still have to be monitored so heavily by the fertility clinic are kind of not as talked about because like so much of the spotlight is sometimes on IVF in this community, but it's so stressful. And you're right. Like it puts a strain on your relationship, on sex, on having to go in before work for way more monitoring, I think, than even during IVF, because I did end up doing IVF. Just to like for a 20-something% chance of getting pregnant at the end of it, like the same chance as if you were just doing it at home without intervention.
It was awful. And I remember times where we knew that this was the day that we needed to have sex and he would be late and I would be stressed out. And then he'd have to be watching like sexy videos in the bedroom to even get in the mood because I'm stressed out and I had my legs up in the air afterwards and he's having to like hold them up and I'm laying there for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes with my legs in the air, all the old wives' tales. Right. I don't know if that really works or not. So I'm not discounting anybody who says it works. And it was just such a dark time. And at the same time, everybody around me, it felt like was getting pregnant. Every single human being I saw, I felt like at the grocery store, Starbucks, wherever I was, I felt like every woman was pregnant around me. And I was so hyper aware of all of it. So I'm like now battling depression, resentment, anxiety, my marriage, which we've only been married like less than 2 years at this point. Everything is just so strained. And I'm approaching 30, which I feel like is a death sentence. And it was just really hard. So then the doctor says, let's do IUI. So we do IUI and it doesn't work. And then we do another IUI and it doesn't work. And I was about to do a third IUI and I was on the medicine. We were going to do this IUI and something just in me just said, something doesn't feel right about this particular doctor. I want to look around and see who else is out there. And that's when I immediately stumbled upon Weill Cornell Center for Reproductive Medicine. And I had seen that some celebrity moms and people like that had allegedly gone there to get pregnant. And I went down their list of doctors and I just picked one that took my insurance and begged them for an appointment. And Brian and I found ourselves just a few days later in the office in Tribeca for Dr. David Reichman. And he was a very straight shooter with us. He said age was on my side and he wanted new blood work of mine, wanted a new semen analysis of Brian. He thought that perhaps we could go the IUI route. And as soon as he got our blood work back, he said, did you know you have low ovarian egg reserve? I said, what's that? He's like, basically, the clock is ticking really loudly for you. And if you want more than one child, we got to get a move on it. So basically, I don't have a lot of eggs.
Did the first doctor not catch that?
It was just never brought to my attention. I was told by my OBGYN and by the previous fertility doctor that I was, quote, normal.
When you're dealing with infertility, there are so many things that are not in your control. But did you know that you can optimize sperm and egg quality in as little as 3 to 4 months? The Fertilité app lets you take back control of your reproductive health, providing a personalized, evidence-based fertility wellness plan to help you optimize your fertility and prepare for IVF or egg freezing. Take their doctor-designed assessment and get all of the tools you need to take charge of your fertility right in the app. Just search Fertilité with an AE instead of a Y on the App Store today.
Well, do you ever feel like, because I was under 30 when I initially started going through fertility treatments too, and I felt like there was almost this sense of, oh, you're going to be fine because you're young. And I had a very similar experience, like timed intercourse failed, IUIs failed, and it was like almost I had unrealistic expectations, or they weren't taking me seriously at my first clinic because I was 27.
I think that probably that is the case as well, that I was sort of maybe with the previous fertility doctor, it didn't feel like a dire situation because he probably was dealing with some women who were maybe in their 40s trying to get pregnant. And, we're in Manhattan, women are waiting later to get pregnant. And I knew women in their 40s that were undergoing IVF and work colleagues and people like that. And we were still at the beginning of celebrities really coming out and talking about surrogacy or IVF, whether it's Chrissy Teigen now or Kim Kardashian and these celebrities. But there were rumors that Nicole Kidman had done it, that Sarah Jessica Parker had done it, that Savannah Guthrie had done it, but they weren't out there using their platforms and talking about it. And this is just 6 years ago. And now look how the tides have changed so much. And I feel like we're really talking about it now, which is so great. So basically, the IUIs don't work. Dr. Reichman calls us and he's like, you have low ovarian egg reserve, so we need to get a move on it. And Brian, your sperm, man, yeah, it is bad. Like, I heard you, I believed you, but like this just solidifies it. Your only option is IVF. And we can submit the paperwork and we can do this next month. So I was going off of already being on these medicated IUIs. I'm so stressed out. IVF sounded like a death sentence. And I've said that many times before. I didn't know anybody that had ever gone through IVF. And it sounded like a horrible, awful last resort option. But I threw myself into it, the insurance process, figuring out how to pay for this or that. And we went straight into blood work, monitoring, medicine, hiring a nurse, because I was so unconfident that we were going to be able to mix it all right. And I'm like, this is so expensive. We can't mess this up. We got to get this right if we're going to be spending all this money and insurance and all of that. So before you knew it, we were doing IVF with ICSI, and we did ICSI because of Brian's sperm, low sperm count and motility and morphology. So for people who out there listening don't know what that is, morphology is the shape of the sperm. Motility is the way in which it swims. So basically his swimmers were swimming all backwards and the shape was not perfect, like a little circle sperm with a tail. Some of them had no tails, no heads. They were misshapen, So ICSI is when they go in, like right under a microscope, and they pick the perfect sperm or close to perfect. And then they actually inject it into the egg. So it gives it more of a chance to fertilize. And after my egg retrieval, and I wasn't so super thrilled with my numbers because I had 9 eggs retrieved and 6 were mature, I thought that I was going to have at least a couple embryos. And when they called us just a few days later to say 2 of the 4 embryos are no good, we're watching 2 of them, but really it only looks like 1 is a decent grade. So we suggest a 3-day transfer. So I'm like, wait, so you're not going to freeze it? We're not going to find out about the diseases that it may or may not carry. We're not going to find out the gender. And they're like, no, you need to come in today for a transfer. And it was Halloween. And I went in for a transfer and just thank goodness it took. And that's my now 5-year-old Leo.
Oh, chills.
No embryos after that. The other one, I still don't understand. The other one that was somewhat decent, they said it just wasn't good enough to freeze. So there we were. I was pregnant. Best news ever. Great pregnancy, easy delivery, an amazing child. And when I went through it the second time for Luke, again, this time I knew what I was getting into, same doctor. And when we knew we wanted to go for a second, we just immediately jumped into IVF. And this time, no more insurance money, paid for it completely out of pocket. And I had less eggs this time. Now I'm 32. It's 2 years later. And less eggs are retrieved. This time, I think I had, for those out there that like the number game, I think I had 6 eggs retrieved. 4 were mature and only 2 fertilized. So it was like one was great. One was like a perfect grade they said, and the other no good. And that embryo was a 3-day transfer. I don't know the rhyme or reason as to why they do a 3-day transfer versus waiting for day 5 for a blastiocyst. I've never gotten a straight answer as to why they did fresh transfers for me.
Well, it's interesting. I actually am glad they did, because some clinics are so adamant about waiting till day 5 and then also genetically testing. And so some people that have viable embryos on day 3 might not by day 5. Like maybe it grows better in your body. Like we don't know. So that you could have not had any embryos if they waited till day 5, whereas you had these day 3s and they grew inside of your body.
I am a testament to a day 3 transfer. So whatever the rhyme or the reason is, Dr. Reichman at Cornell, he did a day 3 transfer again and it stuck, and it was Luke. And Luke is now 3 years old. Great pregnancy, pretty great delivery, and just a healthy, amazing little boy. So I have these 2 little boys and both day 3 transfers and never embryos left over. So if I ever wanted to go for a third, I'm 36 now, it's doubtful. But if I did, again, it's starting over. That's financially starting over, and it's starting over at the beginning of the process. I never froze eggs. I don't have any. We do have frozen sperm. But yeah, so I mean, I realized though, even though my journey was a dark one relative to my own life and my experiences, I completely understand that that is not the case, and that people go on quests for more years than me, many more IVF cycles than me. So on the Richter scale, I do realize how lucky we are that it worked out. So I feel very sensitive to that when I speak about it, because I know how painful it will be for some people to hear that, because some people might say, well, you're still lucky with the results and how it all worked out.
Yeah. I mean, I have 4-year-old twins from IVF, and I went back for a third, and I had embryos, and I almost kind of took for granted that I had embryos, and I was like, oh, it worked once, it'll work again. And I don't know what changed in my body, or I did change clinics because of insurance, and it hasn't worked. So it's like, you never know. I think that's something that a lot of people don't get, like outsiders looking in, they think like IVF is a guarantee. Because like you, and you said it earlier, like I thought IVF was like the last resort, which it isn't. I also thought that it was a guarantee. So like when my first transfer failed back, the transfer before I got pregnant with my twins, I was like, whoa, wait, I'm 28. IVF isn't working for me. That blew my mind. And so I don't know. I think that's something that more people need to know, that it's not just like a guarantee to work. And like, just because you get pregnant once doesn't necessarily mean, it's all, not to scare anyone, but
that's why I'm so scared to, in a way, be greedy and go for a third, try again, because I don't know if my heart can take it, right? I mean, I'm lucky that I had these day 3 transfers work on the first time for Leo and Luke. What if I go back and this time there's no eggs to retrieve? What if I go back and the eggs I have aren't that great, and now I'm like, I should have frozen my eggs and done a round when I was a little younger? And what if, because based on my results, I mean, it's logical that if the first time at 30, I had 9 eggs retrieved, 6 were mature. 2 years later, I had 6 eggs retrieved, 4 were mature. This time it could be like 3 eggs retrieved and 1 mature, right? Like, so that's a lot of money and time and emotional stuff to go through to do it again. So and
you have 2 little ones at home. Like, I think about that too. It's like, it's not just about
it's not a normal situation. And look, we still have unprotected sex just in the off chance that I'll get pregnant, and because I'm open to it. And I think there's a difference between just having sex and letting whatever happens, and that mentality that like, well, if I get pregnant, great. Like a lot of my friends who are now on their 3rd or 4th kid, right? And like they're closing up shop and my girlfriends are getting on birth control, or the guys are having a vasectomy. But again, that's not my reality. Like I'm aware now of my body telling me when I'm ovulating. I know now as a 36-year-old mom of 2, because I'm very aware of what's going on down there now. And so I will sometimes try to, let's have sex during that time. I don't point it out to him. But if it happens, it happens, but it has not. And even in the back of my mind, every time I get my period, it's not disappointment, but it's like, oh, okay, so it didn't work again, like, okay, because I'm always like, well, maybe it will work this time. And I'll be one of those people that you hear about where it's like, oh, she did IVF a few times and then she got pregnant naturally. Right.
I am with you. I am in the same exact boat. We're taking a break. We're trying to just see what happens, but I have PCOS. I don't ovulate regularly, or like it's all wacky. So, but I'm like, maybe I'll be one of those, maybe if I just go to acupuncture, I'll be one of those people but it's,
I have someone in my life, who I work with at CNN, who she is open about the fact that she went through several rounds of IVF. She went to clinics across the country. She was told she wouldn't get pregnant naturally. And she's had 2 kids naturally.
Wow.
So I know that science is science and it's wonderful and statistics are great, but that there's always an anomaly. And so I don't want anybody to ever think that 2 stories are the same.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes it can be hard when you're crowdsourcing information and you want to know every single person's story and exactly about like, okay, so you wore socks after your transfer and you ate pineapple core and you kept your body temperature warm and you went ahead and started sleeping on your left side. And like, sure, I did all those things, but I don't know. Other people are out there getting pregnant in the back of a minivan on a whim, and they're not doing any of those things. So I don't know how much all of that matters. Maybe more just for peace of mind, just like putting your legs up in the air, right?
To feel like you have a sense of control over something,
But the best thing I did, and I'll say it here, and I've said it multiple times before, so this is not new, even though I gave new information earlier, but this is something that I love saying is that if you're not happy with the doctor that you have, go find a new doctor. And I know you said that you switched clinics, and that's really hard. I didn't have sperm and eggs to transfer, embryos, or any of that. So I can imagine that would be so incredibly difficult. So I don't know about that. But what I do know is that had I not switched clinics, I don't think I would have gotten pregnant at that other clinic. Dr. Reichman was the right doctor for me. And even his bedside manner in the beginning was a little cold, but we told him, I remember my husband telling him, like, we need you to hold our hand more. Like, this is rocking our world. I am like the most emotional person. My husband was crying and stuff. Like, we were really, really emotional. And I'm sure a lot of people are. But my husband actually told him, like, when he told us after, I think it was the day that he told us how many embryos we had after watching it for a few days, right? We were waiting to find out if we were going to do a day 3 transfer or not. Our first time around. And he was so matter of fact. And I remember that they called like 20 minutes late or 30 minutes late. And we're sitting there so stressed out. And I'm keep calling the hotline because, they tell you they're going to call at a certain time. And there's like that window and you're just sitting there. It's the worst feeling in the world. And we're not even talking about like the 2-week wait to find out if it took or not. I remember Brian just being like, dude, you need to don't treat us just like a statistic or just another patient. We need more from you. This is really hard on us. We need you to get a little emotional with us. And
Brian.
actually, he was great about it. And Dr. Reichman is like family, we don't see him much or anything, but we keep in touch and we love him so much. And especially the second time around, Brian like gave him a kiss on the forehead when we heard the first heartbeat. I mean, it was just, everybody needs something different. And I know doctors are swamped and they have so many patients and so much going on, but it's okay to be open and honest and tell people what you need, because maybe they don't realize that you need that. So I think that like switch doctors or tell the doctor that you need more from them emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I feel like infertility is often like hindsight is 2020. What do you wish you had known sooner, or what advice would you give to someone who's in the thick of it now?
Well, something you said earlier about acupuncture and eating a certain way and doing things a certain way and de-stressing your life. I think there is something to that. I didn't go down that path. I think that would be really interesting for me to try if I did this a third time. But then again, age is not on my side now. So I'm not sure if I'll ever be the person that goes and does acupuncture and goes down that like self-healing, self-love quest to try to work on some things, which I think could really work. And I've also heard from really great doctors over at like CCRM and things like that about that men can like eat certain things and do certain things to really actually like change their sperm count and motility and morphology. So that's really interesting. So that's something that I had learned that I never applied, that I am not discrediting. I just didn't do it. I just, I think that it goes back to the advocacy in terms of something that I would have done differently. That's a really good question.
It doesn't have to be something you would have done differently, but like, how would you change? The last question I always like to ask everyone is, obviously our company's name is Rescripted. Like, what would you rescript about the way people think about infertility and IVF and family building?
So I haven't talked too much about this. I've done a little bit of talking about this, but maybe it was because we were trying naturally. Then I had the doctor at the first clinic watching my cycles. And then I did medicated IUIs, right? Then I moved to IVF. That was all back to back to back. There was no break. And I'm not saying that there should have been a break, but I had to see a psychiatrist during IVF at Cornell because I was in such a dark place. I think it was the medicine and just my own pressure I was putting on myself, and my marriage was in the dumps. I mean, we were probably at the point where we were not even sure if we were meant to be together at this point. Like, it was so stressful and I was taking it so hard. And they found me a psychiatrist at Cornell who met with me and told me that going through fertility treatments can be like going through treatments for cancer. And I know that that's kind of an insane parallel to make, but the drugs that I were on were really strong. And I really do think that they affected my mental state in a negative way. And I was in just such a bad place. And I just wish that that was part of the conversation. I wish that we were paired with a psychologist or a counselor. Resolve and organizations like that are wonderful, and there are support groups, but I really wish that doctors would sort of take the initiative to say, like, I'm also requiring you to talk to somebody through this process.
And more holistic care.
It was really a dark time. And hearing that doctor, psychiatrist say that to me in front of my husband was also really important, because he was there and he went to all my monitoring appointments and he would go with me with my blood work in the morning. He literally didn't miss an appointment the first time around. The second, I was like, peace, I got this. I can do this. I'll see you at the end. But I really wish, though, that was explained, that no, I'm not crazy. And really, the medicine is really hard on your mind and your body. And like, I already look 3 months pregnant and I'm not pregnant. And everybody around me is getting pregnant. And I cannot get one more baby shower invite. Like, this is awful. I thought I was going to be a mom, and there's a chance that I might not be a mom, or I'm going to have to adopt or do surrogacy, and that's all fine, but that's more money and that's more time and that's more of a process, and that's a lot, and I don't think I can handle it. And I just wish that was something that how they identified that in me. And I think I said, I need help. I'm not okay. I'm not feeling okay. Yeah. But I wish that somebody had proactively said that to me. And I hope that other people have opportunities and resources like that. I wish more doctors would identify when their patient is not okay, because that was just such a terrible time. And it was really validating. I know I keep talking, but it was really validating for them to say that it's okay to not be okay, because what's happening to you is not okay. And this is really hard. And the drugs are very intense. And that was also really important for my husband to hear, because at that point, I think it's when he really got it, that infertility is a disease. And what's happening is really hard on me.
Yeah. And it's okay to take a break. I didn't take a break the first time around either, but now I have to, because I have 2 little ones, and like, that's okay. And, sometimes you can't push through even if you want to, and you have to like listen to your intuition and heal and do all of the self-care and go to see a therapist, and, because it's grueling.
I mean, the good thing is that the psychiatrists, I guess they have psychiatrists at Cornell that are specifically for fertility patients, and they're on the floor. And it was just one night after, I remember it was the evening. I don't remember why we were there, what we were doing, because I know we would monitor in the morning. So I don't really remember why it was the evening, but I just wish that was part of it, that after you're monitored, you have to go talk to somebody for a few minutes and say how you're feeling privately, away from your fertility doctor, to a psychiatrist who's like, Are you okay? What do you need? And even just validate those feelings. I know it's really hard that everyone around you, it seems, is getting pregnant. These drugs are really strong. This is really hard on your body and your mind. That was also really nice to hear that, because at that point, again, I didn't know the statistics. I didn't know anybody going through IVF. I didn't find out until later about friends of mine that had gone through this and who were silently suffering. Even with male factor infertility, Brian had friends who were dealing with the same thing and we didn't know. It wasn't until we decided to publicly share our story on social media when we found out the gender of our second child. And it was Christmas Day and we shared that. And I was so overwhelmed by the response. And I guess I'm sort of a pioneer. No, but this is before Chrissy Teigen and everybody was talking about that. It was about 2 years before people really were using their platforms and talking about this, as it's so commonplace now. And that's when people were like, come to this podcast, join this group, talk about this, write this here. And we've been on this roller coaster ever since of sharing our journey. And it's been so validating. And now Brian's really outspoken about his male factor infertility issues. He ran 50 miles a few years ago without stopping, raising over $80,000 for IVF patients at Cornell. And we're going to do it again this year. We just haven't announced it yet, but we're going to be doing it this spring. He might not run quite 50 miles and it's going to be a little different, but we're going to do it for Cornell again. So you heard it here first. But again, it's been really great to talk about it and tell people that no, it's not all baby showers and positive pregnancy tests, that it is really hard on yourself and your marriage, and it ruins friendships and all of it. You know, I can't tell you how many baby showers I didn't even go to because I was so stressed out.
No, it's a lot. And support people need to understand that too, because if you haven't been through it, it's really hard to understand what it really entails, you know? Well, thank you, Chloe. This has been awesome. Is there anything we missed or anything else you want to say?
No, but I am the co-host of Night of Hope, which is November 14th in New York City at Capitol. It's actually where I had my wedding reception, the irony. Oh, cool. But for anybody who's in town or isn't going to be there in person, they're going to be live streaming the event. And I'm really excited to be co-hosting it this year for Resolve, the National Infertility Organization. And you know, it's just a very full circle moment to be on a stage at a place that signifies the beginning of my relationship with my husband, our marriage, our union. And also, who would have thought that 5 years later, I'd be talking about this in such a public way? It's really wonderful. And I really hope that, you know, I haven't really done much. I can't sit here and say that I'm changing lives, but I do hope that by sharing my story, it provides hope or context or raises things that people might not be thinking about, because all I know how to do is I'm a storyteller, I'm a journalist, and just share my story. And I hope that by sharing, it does help.
Oh, I'm sure it helps countless people. There's a lot of people that suffer in silence, and it doesn't need to be that way. Even if you don't want to tell those close to you, you can reach out to strangers on the internet. Follow Scripted. Follow Chloe.
But yeah, DM me. I read every DM. I don't really get that many. So please DM me. I can help you. I've jumped on the phone with people. I love helping as much as possible. So anybody out there, just follow me on Instagram, shoot me a message. And listen, thank you for all that you're doing. I really appreciate it. I love your podcast. And I just can't thank you enough for having me on. It's really, really a humbling honor. So thank you so much.
Whatever you're currently struggling with, Rescripted is here to hold your hand every step of the way. If you liked today's episode and want to stay up to date on our podcast, don't forget to click subscribe. And to join Rescripted's free fertility support community, head to rescripted.com.